Welcome to the Not Old Better Show, the show covering all things health, wellness, culture, and more. The show for all of us who aren't old, we're better. Each week, we'll interview superstars, experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all related to this wonderful experience of getting better, not older. Now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Welcome, everyone, to the Not Old Better Show Art of Living interview series on radio and podcast. I'm Paul Vogelzang, and as always, I'm so glad you're spending time with us today. For so many in our audience, the decision about where to live as we age or where a loved one should live is one of our life's most personal, emotional, and important conversations. It's not just about services or square footage. It's about dignity. It's about safety, belonging, compassion, and the very human hope that the place we choose will feel like home. Today, we're joined by someone who's helping thousands of families find that peace of mind. Liz Pearce is the product director for senior living at U.S. News and World Report, where she helps lead one of the most respected and trusted consumer ratings programs in the country, the Best Senior Living Ratings. These are not just numbers, though. They are reflections of the voices of more than 450,000 residents and family members who've lived the experience. I've lived the experience. All of us who've lived the experience are going to love Liz Pearce's truth today. Liz's work is focused on empowering older adults and their families with digital tools, rigorous data, and most importantly, a commitment to hearing and honoring the real people behind the reviews. We'll talk about what makes a community stand out, not a company, but a community. We'll talk about the meaning of dignity, how Liz and her team help families feel less overwhelmed by choice, and how Liz's personal stories and personal stories of residents themselves continue to shape and inspire her work. This is about care. This is about trust. This is about living well. My guest today is Liz Pearce from the U.S. News and World Report. This is the Not Old Better Show Art of Living interview series on radio and podcast. Please join me in welcoming Liz Pearce. Liz Pearce, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here.
It's so nice to talk to you. Of course, you focus on senior living, and U.S. News and World Report has done this fantastic research study. You've named 24 senior living residences and communities as the best of for 2025. And so I wonder if we could just start there, kind of right at the very top line, and just tell us what stood out to you and your team about some of the communities and some of this outstanding performance.
Sure, Paul. I will say we actually rated just over 1,800 senior living communities nationwide as best.
Okay, yeah.
U.S. News, we have a directory on our site that includes the majority of the senior living communities nationwide. There are about 22,000 that are profiled on our site. Of that, a subset participated in a voluntary national survey of their residents and family members. And 1,894, I believe, were recognized as best for either assisted living, memory care, or independent living. As I mentioned, our ratings are based on resident and family satisfaction with life in a senior living community. The survey asks about everything from caregiving to safety to people's satisfaction with the management and staff, the food and dining, the community amenities, housekeeping, cleanliness, that sort of thing. And what really stands out across the board for those communities that were rated best is high levels of consumer satisfaction. And when we really dig into the research and what drives that, a couple of key themes stand out. Number one, the quality of safety and caregiving are, of course, table stakes. Everybody who's considering moving into a senior living community, considering, helping a parent move in, you want to know that you or your loved one is going to be safe and well cared for. Beyond that, what we see really sets the best apart from the rest are the relationships, the care that people receive, not just the clinical care or the medical care, but the quality of that care, whether someone greets them by name and really truly seems to care about them as a person. And whether that community gives people, a feeling it's not just a place they live, but it's really their home. Those are some of the themes we see again and again in those communities that are rated as best.
Thank you for that. We'll put links in our show notes today so that all of our audience can find out more about these rankings, particularly the ease with which you simply enter a zip code and you can scroll down into the various rankings by community. And I thought that was really helpful. That just gave me this role. I've mentioned to you, my mom is in Seattle. I found Seattle locations. I found San Francisco locations, West Coast, East Coast, Midwest. It's really just a broad spectrum of communities and these living environments. Did you find anything that just surprised you about maybe some of what the families were prioritizing?
Surprised, I won't. Surprised, no. I think really
Yeah.
it is what you'd expect
Yeah.
about what
Safety.
people are prioritizing going into the search.
Mhm.
Actually, what surprised us a little bit, because we've done a lot of research, what matters to families
Yeah.
when they're searching, and also, what matters to folks after they moved in. And we see that during that search, obviously, right up front, people want to know if a community is going to be safe. They want to know about the caregiving. They don't always know earlier on in the search about the importance of those social relationships and the sense of community that senior living can provide. And I think they also, don't tend to prioritize in their search the value of activities, opportunities to engage. We've heard a lot of people say things like, I would never do that activity. My mom doesn't want to play bingo. And after folks move in, it turns out that some of the programming and the activities and the opportunities for socialization turn out to be some of the most impactful things about life in senior living.
You mentioned the numbers, and I got those wrong right at the top of the interview. And my apologies, but 450,000 survey responses came in. That is just an enormous amount of data. One of the reasons that I just found this fascinating and why I really wanted to talk with you a little bit more about this is because you did dive into some of the stories and even learned about what the residents' kind of needs were, and I just thought that was really kind of a fascinating element because you blend the data with the person and the people. What what does it mean to you to reflect some of these personal rankings with the data? Because that to me just stood out as being so essential, especially for a family member whose, loved one is at a senior community.
Yeah, that's a great question. And senior living is at U.S. News. Senior living sits inside of our healthcare vertical. U.S. News rates a lot of different types of traditional healthcare providers, hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, skilled nursing facilities. And there's just a wealth of data because CMS is a payer for those services, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. Um, and we don't have that available in senior living because, as you probably know, Paul, senior living is generally private pay. And so there isn't the same type of government outcomes data for senior living as there is for something like a skilled nursing facility or a hospital. And because of that, we've really leaned into the family surveys, the resident and family perspectives and experiences.
Hmm.
And you know, as you mentioned, 450,000, it's a tremendous number of results, but each one of those results, when you see the gold badge on the U.S. News website, if you see that a community is high performing, that really reflects the stories of the real people who live there on a day-to-day basis. And we see that from families like you who are searching. They want to see the numbers. They want an objective methodology, something they know they can trust. But I think it's an emotional decision, and you want to hear from people who are in the same situation as you, and you want to, um, you know, imagine what life could be like on a day-to-day basis for you or your loved one who's living there. So I think, our ratings where we are tying that rigorous analysis of that wealth of survey responses with some family stories on our community profile pages on the site. That's proven to be a really powerful combination. So I'm glad to hear you say that it resonates with you. And we're kind
Yeah.
of taking another step beyond that and leaning into that not just in our ratings, but also in our editorial strategy. I mentioned our loneliness survey earlier.
Mhm.
We're looking more and more for opportunities where we know that a lot of seniors and their families are struggling with loneliness. And we've done kind of a combination of some quantitative research where we really dig into that question by asking, families of seniors who've moved into senior living, some qualitative questions, some quantitative questions about what their experience was like, and publish that as a report on our website so that information is out there, families are seeing it, and we're starting to supplement it with resident and family profiles where we'll interview a family or a resident or somebody who's dealing with that issue and is at that stage of their senior living journey. Because again, we're seeing that combination of kind of research, expert perspective, but also the words and views and videos of families who are in that situation. Kind of giving that 360-degree view, I think, is really important.
Liz Pearce, this has been incredibly insightful so far. I think what stands out most is how these ratings are more than just statistics. They really tell a story about what residents value and what families need to feel confident and supported about. Let's shift gears a little. I'd love to explore the human side of this work, the stories you've heard, the moments that have stayed with you, and the meaning of words like dignity and home in the context of aging well. Because behind every data point is a person, and sometimes a powerful reason why this work matters more than ever. We've talked a little bit about the numbers, and I'm going to personalize this just once more and just say to you, in my family's search for the right community, we really looked at some educational. My mom is 95. She really wanted to keep kind of studying and keep sharp mentally. She likes to write poetry, and we actually found a program at the facility that she's at that teaches creative writing and poetry. So it was just very unique. But one of the things that we looked for across the board, aside from something very specific, was this idea of dignity. And you touch on that too. And I think that's so important to all of us as we age. So many of my audience are thinking about a dignified existence. What did you find that the word dignified means to families in your work?
That's a big question. I think, my perspective on it is just that, my perspective, but, reflecting on that question. And I love that story about your mom and the poetry.
Thanks.
In our research, we see people feeling apprehensive about senior living. And I think one of the things that they're apprehensive about is losing their independence. Of course, as anyone would be. And kind of on the flip side of that, when we hear about people who are having good experiences in senior living, I think it's people who really feel like they're being seen for who they are. It's not just a caregiving needs are met type of situation, but it's being in an environment where every day somebody sees you, they know you, they ask about your kids, they know what you're interested in and what you care about, and it kind of it's not just about being independent and being able to do things, but it's about being part of a community where you're seen and known and recognized. And that story you told about your mother, it made me think of one of our first resident and family profiles in our series that I mentioned earlier. And it was a gentleman who had been suffering from dementia. We moved into a memory care community in California, I believe it was, and he had been a pastor. And although he couldn't do everything that he could, in his memory care community, they actually arranged for him to lead kind of a study group, a prayer group with other members and their families. And so I think it's that, again, even if you can't do everything you could do, you may need help with this, you may need help with that. When you say dignity, I think, being seen and appreciated for who you are is really what stood out to me.
Well, congratulations on this work. It is so helpful. The digital nature of the work really helps families, I think, because it gives us this sense of analysis in a deeper way and allows us to really drill down in some important ways. Really, you're very involved in the digital tools that allow for some of this analysis. What have you seen in the way of tools that has really improved this, helping families compare and make selections into these senior living communities? Especially here we are, with artificial intelligence, right? So much of our world is being, kind of driven by this. What kind of tools are there that help these families?
Great question. I think, a few things came to mind here. One is, I think, more and more families are living further and further apart in the US. And I think, this is also a trend that COVID accelerated. It was going on, but that digital experience, people are doing more and more of their research independently upfront online, whether that's because they're a busy professional who's helping their parent, whether it's because they live in a different place. And so the digital experiences, I'll say, that really bring a community to life, even for somebody who can't visit because of time constraints or um, their location, I think is increasingly really important. So having, photos, video tours, virtual tours, there's been a lot of developments on that front in the last, 5 to 10 years. Um, and I think too, you mentioned the AI era where you can go on to Google or wherever you're going to go and ask any question you want and get some answer. I think to us at US News, that really reinforces the value of the work we're doing, our rigorous methodology, our data collection, because we know that although, there's lots of information out there. I think it's increasingly important for people to have a trusted source of information that's really transparent about its data collection practices and its methodology. And again, has a reputation that people can trust because this is an important decision. There's more information than ever out there. And so I think, just continuing to stay true to that promise of objective, data driven, rigorous analysis is more important than ever.
Hmm. Certainly. Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for the story about the pastor in California. That was really inspiring and lovely to hear. Uh, Tell us maybe another story that you've heard from either a family member or a resident that, has been shared with you that you just found really inspiring in your work, because this is the kind of work that is inspirational for all of us, and you may walk away with that same inspiration.
Yeah, I'll share one from my own family. My
Mm.
grandfather moved for a while into an assisted living community last year. He was 100 years old.
Wow.
He had been living in his own apartment, the whole time
Mm.
with my grandmother, who passed away in the spring. And at that point, they'd been married for 75 years.
Wow.
And being really, although he'd been living independently, being on his own was a big challenge for him emotionally, psychologically. He was had people coming in to visit him every day, multiple times, people who cared about him. Um, but he was anxious. He was struggling a little bit, I would say, with his mental health. And eventually, it was a hard decision for him for that reason I mentioned earlier about the importance of independence. He grew up during the Great Depression. He thought he should be able to kind of do it all and take care of himself. He eventually made the decision to move into assisted living near where he lived. And he found some community there. He had neighbors who he cared about and who cared about him. He
Mhm.
hadn't been eating real kind of whole solid meals for multiple years, and he started deciding that he wanted to do that so that he could show up at the dinner table and, communicate and, be in community with the other folks who lived there. There was a time when he had pneumonia and he had to go to the hospital. And I was talking to him on the phone and he said, well, I think I'm getting better and I better hurry up and get back there because I know the folks are going to be worried about me and wondering where I am. And that just really, for me, highlights some of those benefits of engagement and community that we were talking about earlier.
That's lovely. Thank you. I could just hear in your voice, some of the emotion that you felt throughout all of this, and certainly for our family, there was guilt in moving my mom from the family home. My father had passed away, and we knew we needed to do this, and my mom even knew she needed to do this. But at 95, it's a hard move. It created a lot of anxiety for her, a lot of anxiety and guilt for myself and my two sisters. What's the message that you want our audience to take away from the study, from the ratings that help kind of overcome some of that guilt, some of that sense of anxiety that we're feeling about this subject?
Oh, that's a great question. And there's no silver bullet. There's no one answer that's going to be right for every family. But some of the things that I've found and I've learned in my family's own journey and in my work, is that, you know, folks in that situation, they're not alone. There are resources out there to help you, and there are, good places that you can find, either for information or for where your family can go. There's resources and information out there like U.S. News that can help you learn on your own and become more familiar with some of the different care level offers, kind of guide you through, how to do your own research, the types of questions to ask, how to evaluate on your own. And there are also great resources like your local area on your local agency on aging, that can provide some of that kind of firsthand in person help too, which can be really valuable. So, to me, the thing that I have learned and I hope other people find is, you're not alone. There are resources out there, and once you start looking, there are good options available.
Final question for you, Liz Pearce. From a professional standpoint, you really are combining your expertise in journalism with technology. And then there is this sense of advocacy really that comes out of this too on behalf of those of our loved ones that are seeking these communities. What inspires you to do this work? Because it's got to be a labor of love too.
It is. I think, part of what inspires me is my experience with my own family and seeing how difficult this decision can be. It really motivates me to help other families who are in the same situation with the best content, the best data, the best user experience that we can provide at U.S. News.
Yeah.
And I think, that challenge is only growing. I read somewhere recently that by 2060, the population of folks who are 85 plus will have doubled since 2020. So the need for this type of services is growing by leaps and bounds. The types of offerings that are available, the types of options that are available are changing too. And the way people, search and find information online with AI is also rapidly evolving. So there's a lot of need for good, researched, vetted information, and a lot of challenges and changes in the way that people expect to be able to find and consume that information. So it's rewarding and really interesting work.
Well, again, congratulations. It's just been a pleasure to talk with you. Selfishly, I would love to have you back. I know our audience is going to be just eager to learn more. And as you do more work in this area of technology and your journalism expertise and all of this work around senior living, we'd love to hear more, particularly about the ratings as they kind of come back over the course of the next couple of years. But congratulations on all that you're doing. Thanks so much for your generous time and your wonderful stories. We really appreciate it. So great talking with you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Yeah, you as well, Paul. It's been great to chat.
Thanks, Liz.
Take care.
Liz, this has been such a meaningful conversation, not just about data and ratings, but about people, purpose, and what it truly means to age with dignity. Your work at U.S. News and World Report is helping families feel more confident, more informed, and more empowered to make choices rooted in care and compassion. You've reminded us that when we talk about senior living, we're not just talking about buildings or amenities. We're talking about belonging, about trust, and about finding a place where someone's story can continue with safety, respect, and joy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Liz Pearce, for sharing your insights, your personal experience, as well as your professional experience, and all the heart that we can tell is present as you talk about this work. Please join us again. We'd love to have you back. To our audience, be well, be safe. Let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show, Art of Living Be well, be safe. Let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show, Art of Living interview series on radio and podcast. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.